안녕하세요. 원생님 고양이 제니예요. 오늘은 해리포터 3권 Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban Chapter 4 The Leaky Cauldron. 어제 있던 거 마저 읽어보도록 할게요.
No, said Mr. Weasley, looking extremely grave. They pulled us all up our regular jobs to mystery to try and find him, but no luck so far. What are we gonna reward if we caught him? Asked Ron. It'd be good to get some money. Don't be ridiculous, Ron, said Mr. Weasley, who on closer inspection looked very strange. Black is not gonna be caught by a 13-year-old wizard. It's the Azkaban guards who got him back, mark my words. At that moment, Mrs. Weasley entered the bar, laden with shopping, and followed by the twins, Fred and George, were about to stop their 5th year in Hogwarts. The new elected hot boy, Percy, and the Weasley's younger child, girl, Ginny. Ginny, who had always been very taken with Harry, seemed even more heartily embarrassed than usual when she saw him, perhaps because he had saved her life during their last term at Hogwarts. She went very red and muttered, "Hello," without looking at him. Percy, however, held out his hand solemnly, as though he and Harry had never met, and said, "Hello, how nice to see you." "Hello, Percy," said Harry, trying not to laugh. "I hope you're well," said Percy, pompously shaking hands. It was rather like being introduced to the mayor. "Very well, thanks." "Harry," said Fred, elbowing Percy out of the way and bowing deeply. "Simply splendid to see you, old boy." "Marvelous," said George, pushing Fred aside and seizing Harry's in turn. "That's really splitting." Percy squalled. "That's enough now," said Mr. Weasley. "Mom!" said Fred, as though he'd only just spotted her, and seized her hand too. "How rarely cocking to see you." "I said that's enough," said Mr. Weasley, depositing shopping an empty chair. "Hello, Harry dear. I suppose you had exciting news." She pointed at the brand new silver badge on Harry's chest. "Second hot boy in the family," she said, swelling with pride. "Alas," Fred muttered under his breath. "I don't doubt that," said Mr. Weasley, frowning suddenly. "I notice they haven't made you two prefects." "What do you want to be prefects for?" said George, looking revolted at the very idea. "It'll take all the fun of the night." Ginny giggled. "You want to set a better life as your sister," snapped Mr. Weasley. "Ginny's got other brothers to set an example, Mother," said Percy loftily. "I'm going to change for dinner." He disappeared, and George heaved a sigh. "We tried to stand in the pyramid," said Harry, "but Mom started us." Dinner that night was a very enjoyable affair. Tom and the Imperfect put 3 tables together in a parlor, and the 7 Weasleys had Harry and Hermione accelerate through fried, delicious courses. "How are we getting to the pink crotted matter that?" asked Fred as stuck into the sumptuous chocolate pudding. The mystery is providing the cup of the cars," said Mr. Weasley. Everyone looked up at him. "Why?" said Percy curiously. "It's because of you, Percy," said George seriously, "and there'll be little pranks on the blunnets with HB on them." "For a humongous big head," said Fred. Everyone except Percy and Mrs. Weasley snorted in their pudding. "Why are the mysteries providing cars, Father?" Percy asked again in a dignified voice. "Well, as we haven't got one anymore," said Mr. Weasley, "and those work they're doing them a favor." His voice was casual, but Harry couldn't help noticing that Mr. Weasley's ears had gone red, just like Ron's did when he was under pressure. Good job, too, said Mrs. Weasley briskly. Do you realize how much larger with the between you and nicer with the muggle undergrounds? You are all packed, aren't you? Ron hasn't put all his new things in his trunk yet, said Percy in a long, suffering voice. He stumped them on my bed. You better go to properly, Ron, because everyone much mine in the morning, said Weasley, called down the table, squalled at Percy. Felt very full and sleepy. One by one, they made their way upstairs to their rooms to check their things for the next day. Ron and Percy were next door to Harry. He had just closed and unlocked his own trunk when he heard angry voices from the wall and went to see what was going on. The door number 12 was ajar, and Percy was shouting. It was here, in the bedside table. I took it off for punishing. I haven't studied all right, Ron whirled back. What's up? Said Harry. My head boy badge has gone, said Percy, rounding on Harry. So Scarecrow's right on it, said Ron, throwing it out of the chalk to you. I like a little in a ball. You're not going anywhere. Just find my badge, said Percy. I'll get out of spot. I'm packed, Harry said to Ron and went downstairs. Harry was halfway along the passage to the bar, which was now very dark, when he heard another pair of angry voices coming from the arm. A second later, he recognized them as the Mr. and Mrs. Weasleys. He hesitated, not wanting them to know he had heard them routing, and the sound of own name made him stop, then move closer to the parlor door. Makes no sense not to tell him, Mr. Weasley was saying heatedly. Harry's got a right to know. I tried to tell Fudge, but he insists on treating Harry like a child. He's not 13 years old, and I think the truth would terrify him, said Mr. Weasley shrilly. Do you really want to think Harry back to school with that hanging over him? For heaven's sake, his head been not knowing. I don't want to make him miserable. I want to put him in his guard, retorted Mrs. Weasley. You know what Harry and Ron are like, wandering off by themselves. I've been under the Forbidden Forest twice, but Harry mustn't directly hear. But I think what could have happened to him that night if Ron had gone home? If a night bus hadn't picked it up, I'm prepared to bet it would have been dead before the ministry found him. But it's not that, it's fun, so what's the point? Molly, they say Sirius Black's mad, and maybe he is, but was clever enough to escape from Azkaban, and that's supposed to be impossible. It's been 3 weeks, and no one's seen how long her hair of him. And I don't care if Fudge came to Daily Prophet, we're no near the catching Black than inventing self-spelling wands. The only thing you know for sure is what Black's after. But Harry will be perfectly safe at Hogwarts. We thought Azkaban was perfectly safe. If Blackcat broke out of Azkaban, he could break into Hogwarts. But no one's really sure that Black's after Harry. There was a thought on board, and Harry was sure Mr. Weasley had banged his fist on the table. Molly, how many times do I have to tell you? They didn't report it in the bus because Fudge wanted to keep quiet, but Fudge went out to Azkaban the night before the stay. A guard told Fudge that Black's been taking his leave for a while now. Always the same words. He's at Hogwarts. He's at Hogwarts. Black is deranged, Molly, and he wants Harry dead. If you ask me, he thinks murdering Harry will bring you-know-who back to power. Black's like angry now that he's stopped you-know-who, and he's had 12 years alone in Azkaban to do around there. There was a silence. Harry leaned still closer to the door, desperately to hear more. Well, Arthur, you must do what you think is right. But you're forgetting Albus Dumbledore. I don't think anything could hurt Harry at Hogwarts while Dumbledore's headmaster. I suppose he knows all about this. Of course he knows. We had to ask him if he wanted the Azkaban guards stationing themselves around the school grounds. He wasn't happy about it, but he agreed. Not happy? Why shouldn't we be happy if they're to catch Black? Dumbledore isn't fond of the Azkaban guards, said Mr. Weasley happily. Nor am I, if it comes to that. But when you're dealing with a wizard like Black, you sometimes have to join forces with those you're going to avoid. If they save Harry, then I will never say another word against them, said Mr. Weasley wearily. It's late, Molly. We better go up. Harry heard chairs move. As quietly as he could, he hurried down the passage to the bar and out of sight. The parlor door opened, and a few seconds later, footsteps told him that Mr. and Mrs. Weasley were climbing the stairs. The bottle of red tonic was lying under the table they had started earlier. Harry waited until he heard Mr. and Mrs. Weasley's bedroom door close, then headed back upstairs with the bottle. Fred and George was crouching in the shadows on the landing, heaving with laughter as he listened to Percy dismantling his and Ron's room in the search of his bag. "We've got it," Fred whispered to Harry. "We've been improving it." The badge now read, "Big Hat Boy." The first laughed, went to give Ron the red tonic, then shut himself in his room and lay down on his bed. So Sirius Black was after him. That explained everything. Fudge had been leaning in with the because he was so relieved to find him alive. He made Harry promise to stay on diagonally where there were plenty of wizards to keep an eye on him. And he was sending 2 mystery cars to take them all to the station tomorrow so that the Weasleys could look after Harry until he was on the train. Harry lay listening to the muffled shadow next door and wondered why he didn't feel more scared. Sirius Black had murdered 13 people with one curse. Mr. and Mrs. Weasley obviously thought Harry would be panicked to go and think it is truth. But Harry happened to agree wholeheartedly with Mrs. Weasley that the safest place on earth was wherever Albus Dumbledore happened to be. Didn't people always say that Dumbledore was the only person Lord Voldemort had ever been afraid of? Surely Black, as Voldemort's right-hand man, would be just as frightened of him. And then there is Azkaban guards everyone kept talking about. They seem to scare most people senseless, and the air station all around the school. Black's chances of getting inside seemed very remote. No, in all, the thing that bothered Harry most was the fact that his chances of visiting Hogwarts now looked like 0. Nobody would want Harry to leave the safety of the castle until Black was caught. In fact, Harry suspected his every move would be carefully watched until the danger had passed. He scowled at the dark ceiling. Did they think he couldn't look after himself? He'd escaped Lord Voldemort 3 times. He wasn't completely useless. Unbidden, the image of the beast in the shadows of Magnolia Crescent crossed his mind. What to do when you know the worst is coming? "I'm not going to be murdered," Harry said out loud. "That's the secret, dear," said his mirror sleepily. 재미있게 들으셨다면 구독과 좋아요 꾹꾹 눌러주시고 챕터 5에서 만나요. 안녕!